avoiding probate is the number one reason that people use a revocable living trust, but I also think that there's another huge advantage, a very practical advantage that often gets overlooked, so let's get into it. All right, so avoiding probate is the number one reason that a revocable living trust is used, but there's also this other aspect that I think is widely overlooked and just as important, and that is this very practical aspect of a revocable living trust forces you to get organized. It forces you to put together an inventory of your assets. So, and why I'm mentioning this, or like how you're forced into that. So as a recap, a revocable living trust is usually used to help you avoid probate. And the idea is that you take assets in your individual personal name and you retitle them in the name of your revocable living trust. And because it's not in your individual name, it avoids probate. It's an issue of changing the nature of legal ownership from you as an individual to the name of the trust. That alone allows you to avoid probate. But part of that is you have to fund that trust with those assets. So you actually have to sit down and make an inventory, whether you actually do it on paper or whether you do it in your head, but you have to go through this practice of funding the trust. Now, I'm located in Texas. Texas is widely known, or I should say Texas attorneys are widely known for not funding revocable living trusts. Some do, a lot don't. There's different reasons why they do this, but ultimately, just because you have the revocable trust doesn't mean that you've taken that extra measure to be able to avoid probate. In that process of making sure that you avoid probate is getting those assets titled in that trust. And that's where you're going to put together that inventory. You're going to look at all the assets that you have, your cash accounts at banks, your brokerage accounts, your retirement accounts, whether you have real estate in the jurisdiction, in the state where you live, or maybe you have real estate in another jurisdiction because you have, a beach house or a summer home or a lake house, or maybe you have a family farm that's located in a different state. Or maybe it's, I think I said life insurance. So there's different things. It could be antiques and art and automobiles and etc. There's all these different types of things that you have that no one really knows where they're located unless you write it down. Now, one of the great things about doing this exercise of putting together a revocable living trust is that you're going to put together an inventory of all of your assets and hopefully make sure that they get funded or titled in the name of the trust. And part of that, not that you necessarily write down every asset that goes into that, not that you formally put together a document that includes that inventory, but a part of the practice is that you are doing that. You're going through and identifying all the assets that you have and making sure that they get put into the trust. But this is also helpful for subsequent generations, or those who will be benefiting from your revocable living trust once you pass away. It also helps you go through the process of saying, why do I have that bank account, that cash account open with that one bank that I've had for 40 years that only has, $200 in it or $1,000? Why do I keep that open? Maybe I should just shut that down and move it over to this other bank. Or why do I keep that small brokerage account, that just sits there kind of neglected and I don't do a lot with it? So there is this opportunity to sit down and do some reflection on whether or not you can consolidate assets or accounts and bring them all under the same umbrella. So the revocable living trust really kind of acts like a holding company. It's not a holding company, but it kind of acts like a holding company for you to make sure that you're putting all your assets under it. So I think this is really important. And even if you live in a jurisdiction where attorneys don't really encourage you to fund your revocable living trust, I think this is important. You can still do this on your own. And even if your attorney doesn't place an emphasis on funding your revocable living trust, you yourself, you're in the driver's seat, you yourself could still do that. You could ask your attorney questions about how to do it if the attorney's not going to help you. That way you lead the charge. But with most people, they have a personal residence. That's just a matter of updating the deed to move it over to the trust. Some people will title their cars in the name of the Revocable Living Trust. That's just a matter of going to the DMV or contacting the state and getting those titles updated. You have cash accounts, you have savings accounts, checking accounts, brokerage accounts. That can be just a matter of contacting the financial institution and getting those accounts titled in the name of the trust. They might need some information from you. And it is a bit of a process. There is a little bit of heavy lifting, if you want to call it that, to facilitate this. But ultimately, the process is it helps you get an inventory of your assets, make sure that you know what's there, what's not there, and you can document that, whether it's a handwritten note or it's something that you attach to the trust itself, but you can document where you have assets, how they're titled, what the values of them were when you titled them in the name of the trust, etc. It's a great practice. It's very practical. It helps you and it helps the next generation who's going to be there to benefit from your trust.